Hey, thanks, Scott, and thanks to everyone for joining me today, joining us today. Can you hear me, Scott?
You're loud and clear.
Okay, great. Um, I want to first start by thanking Scott and the Environmental Working Group for everything that you've done with regard to this particular cause. I also want to thank our guests for sharing their stories today. Marvin Salter, uh, later Anthony Browning and Alyssa Browning, then Deborah uh, Giannakini, also known as Mrs. G, and then Amanda Joyce. Amanda is from the Chicago area, as well as the Brownings. So I'm glad that you folks are all doing well, and I hope everyone is safe and healthy today. Fundamentally, what we learned today and yesterday was a victory for public health and everyone ever harmed by these dangerous products. Johnson & Johnson's asbestos contaminated baby powder will finally be taken off store shelves after decades of the company selling the product despite knowing of its dangers and fighting against testing, which would have detected the risks. When I launched my investigation into this issue 14 months ago, I did not know where it would lead, but I am glad it's led to this outcome through our work, along with that of so many advocates and dedicated individuals, including everyone on this call. This investigation has always been especially important to me because it was the first I opened as chair of my subcommittee after learning of the scale of this issue and seeing how many people had been affected. On a personal note, by the way, in my own household, Johnson & Johnson's baby powder was ubiquitous when I was growing up. And certainly it was everywhere in many households of many, many Americans and people around the world. In our hearing in March of last year, we focused specifically on J&J's baby powder, the fact that the company knew for decades that it was dangerous, but still continued to sell it while expanding its marketing and targeting women of color in particular. J&J's CEO refused to appear before my subcommittee, but we heard from Mr. Marvin Salter, who will be telling his family's story in a few minutes. But our investigation wasn't only about finding wrongdoing and telling the human story, as important as both of those things are. In December, we held another hearing in which we heard from experts on the best testing methods for detecting asbestos so that the FDA can prevent such dangerous products from ever coming to the market again. That hearing finally sparked the FDA into action, and 2 months after that hearing, the FDA issued its preliminary recommendation for the agency to improve its testing methods to keep consumers safe from asbestos. While the FDA has not yet implemented those recommendations, my subcommittee and I have continued to hammer this issue because without these additional protections, we may still have people getting sick from asbestos-laced talcum. Just a few days ago, through the efforts of so many, J&J made its announcement. While this was an enormous victory, as Scott has said, there still remains work to be done. I've repeatedly urged the FDA to adopt its preliminary recommendations for testing for asbestos in the talc used in consumer products. That's a strong recommendation that they first were presented with, supported by experts at the FDA and those who we've worked with, and it's time the FDA follow the science. However, there's one more thing that they need to do in addition to adopting those recommendations, and that is adopting the heavy liquid separation method, also known as HLS testing, because it's the best way to protect consumers before anyone is harmed by a dangerous product in the first place. Again, that's heavy liquid separation method, HLS testing. Our hope is that J&J's announcement came because it already expects the FDA to implement effective testing requirements in the near term, and it knew that its product could not pass those standards. Once these new standards are in place, it will keep us safe from all the other talc products on the market, such as cosmetics, like lipstick, mascara, face powder, blush, eyeshadow, and foundation. Talc's also used in food processing and to make some supplements including pharmaceutical pills, chewing gum, and polished rice. Consumer groups have also found it in crayons and children's toys, like crime scene fingerprint kits. Because of the collective efforts of so many, including many of the people on this call, the most common product using carcinogenic talc, namely Johnson & Johnson's baby powder, is being taken off the market. But it's still time for the FDA to fulfill its responsibility and protect consumers from the rest. If the FDA fails to take that step through its rulemaking power, I'm committed to taking that action through legislation, because no one should get sick because companies cared more about profits than people's lives, and because the FDA failed to protect the American people.